Hello, and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and I'm very glad you're joining us again today. We have invited back Marianne Williamson, who's been a guest on the show several times over the years, both based on her spiritual work and many books, well over a dozen books, on different subjects regarding spirituality, consciousness, and human service, which she has been a major proponent of for so long. And then she stepped into the world of politics, bringing her sense of humanity forward in a place that so desperately needs it. And so we've been very pleased to know that Marianne has been willing to go forward as a presidential candidate in the last two elections. And so we're going to be speaking with her today about her experience in the world of politics, in the belly of the beast, if you will, and then taking a look forward at what we might be able to anticipate, aspirationally at least, and then doing the work on the ground. So, Marianne, so good to have you back on A Better World. Always great to see you.
Thank you, Mitchell. Thank you for having me, and it's good to be here.
Good. I'm so glad. So, as I just mentioned, you've been in the belly of the beast. You've witnessed it firsthand. You were put into such difficult circumstances, both with the body politic itself and the media. So I'd really like to hear from you just a few basic things. One is, what was your experience? I want people to really know what it's like to be a political candidate in general and a presidential candidate in particular, on one hand. And then from that, where are we going from here? What's going on now? You live in Washington, D.C. You're watching it up front and personal. It just got invaded by the National Guard, by federal troops. And so I'd really love to see the whole panorama from your point of view. And then at the end, where we go from here.
Well, first of all, and it seems now so long ago, the presidential election in 2024, so much has happened since.
Yeah.
There are two distinctly different realms. One is talking to the people of the United States about things that matter in terms of the fate of our country. Within that sphere, it is extremely inspiring. It's no different than when I talk about A Course in Miracles or anything else. I'm reminded of Gandhi's line, politics should be sacred. He didn't mean by that it should be doctrine or dogma or bringing up quote unquote religious topics, but he meant that we come at this subject from a deep place within our hearts, from a deep place within ourselves. That was deeply inspiring when you're actually out talking to people. It made me ever more inspired and motivated by the possibilities of American democracy. So when it comes to my experience of the American people, A plus kind of. And then there is the realm of what I call the political media industrial complex, the political machine. It is darker than you can imagine. It is vicious. It is filled with people who casually lie. It is all about money. It is all about an entitled few who think that they have the right to make decisions for the American people. On a personal level, it was almost devastating. It was so brutal to wake up in the morning and to see what they're willing to do and what they're willing to say to peripheralize someone who they find inconvenient in the conversation. But I think at this point, what's most significant is that having experienced that, I'm sad to say I'm not surprised that something as seriously damaging to our democracy has emerged. Because what I saw was that the political industrial complex actually blocks, it acts as gatekeeper to the process of democracy. If there had been real democracy in the primaries, for instance, in 2016, and definitely in the process of 2024, we would not be where we are today. In terms of where we are today.
Specifically, what are you referring to when you say that?
Well, I'm referring to the fact that, for instance, the DNC put its hands on the scale in 2016, for instance, in the Democratic Party. Now, I don't know if they had not done that. I don't know who would have won that primary. We'll never know. Would it have been Hillary or would it have been Bernie? But I do know this. Trump would never have been president. Because if you just let democracy play out, Democrats would have been so excited. And as it were, it acted as a suppressant, a psychological and emotional suppressant on the race itself. And then on 2024, I mean, I was there, I can tell you. What had happened was that President Biden had said that he was going to be a one-term president. He had said that.
Oh, I
Once he
know.
got in there, a small group of people, Ron Klain and others at the White House, simply decided that there would not be a primary in 2024. Two things about this. First of all, by
But they also
definition, Marianne,
decided that he should run again,
well,
even
that's the
though he
point.
said what you said, which is,
Right,
I've quoted this so many times. I will be a one-term president. I am a
right,
bridge president, an
right,
interim president,
right,
sort of
right,
quote,
right.
subtext back to normalcy.
So, well, that's the point. If there's no primary, the point was he would just be basically chosen. Now,
Exactly.
obviously, that memo would not have been sent to Marianne Williamson, so I didn't get that memo. But even more importantly, who the hell are they to make that kind of a decision?
Exactly. That's the
And
real
in
point.
order, right, and in order to get people to go along with that, and traditional Democrats might look at that because the acquiescence to that was absolutely absurd. We like to say that the other side has cult-like thinking, but it was cult-like thinking on the part of traditional Democrats to so easily buy into such an obvious lie. And the obvious lie was, quote unquote, we don't primary incumbent presidents. Now, Mitchell, before you and I got on this show, we were talking about things that we remember, right? Our age group
Yes.
remembers. Well, if you're old enough to remember, that's such a crock because Eugene
Yeah.
McCarthy and Bobby Kennedy Sr. both primaried Lyndon Johnson, who, of course, at that time was an incumbent president. By the way, because Eugene McCarthy did so well
Excellent
in New
point.
Hampshire,
Yeah.
that's what got LBJ to drop out. Primaries are extremely important. I think it's also important to remember that George Washington, in his farewell address, warned us about political parties, period. He said
Correct.
that they would form factions of men more loyal to their party than to their country. Then John Adams, our second president, said he saw political parties as the biggest threat to democracy. The other lie that they concocted in all of this was to make sure that no pesky little people like Marianne Williamson would dare to weigh in on this. Now, and then the other lie was she's a spoiler, and you can't be a spoiler if you're running as a Democrat. But it was very disappointing. And it was disappointing even among the kind of people that you and I know. How many
Yeah.
people were like, no, we have to go with Biden. We have to go with Biden, who were not even open to going and hearing what someone else said. Because my argument was, they're not going to beat him this time. And I think the follow-up question would be why? You see, because, and I'll tell you why. They were fighting Trump. I was fighting fascism.
Yeah.
My conversation,
Good point.
Mitchell, the kind of field that you and I are in, we're by definition systems thinkers. We're
Correct.
not just looking at the level of symptom. We're looking at the level of cause. We're looking at psychological issues. We're looking at emotional issues. And
Absolutely.
being that and traveling the country as much as I have, and that's why I ran in 2022. I saw the storm coming. And these people thought if we raise enough money, that makes the devil laugh to think that money can contain evil. And also, if you have
Great
even
line.
a right, and if you have even a perfunctory, a seventh grade understanding of history, whether you've read about the French Revolution, whether you've read about Germany in the 30s, you know that large groups of desperate people become a national security risk in a free society because they become a petri dish out of which all manner of societal and personal dysfunction is inevitable. When you add to that the decrease in the teaching of American history. When you and I grew up, we took classes in civics, we took American history. Remember, that was part of a public school education. You have
Yes.
so many Americans who were, if you don't teach people what the Bill of Rights is when they're children, then and as an adult, they don't even know to be horrified when the Bill of Rights is being shredded,
Violated.
which it basically is
Yeah.
today.
Right.
So I saw how, number one, inevitable what we have today is, number two, how preventable it was, and in that sense, very tragic. What we have today, I'm afraid to say, is we are an authoritarian society already. He's already wrapped up narratives with legal firms, law firms, universities, media companies, museums. You've already got a Congress that basically rubber stamps his agenda rather than acting, legislating from their own
Like
Congress.
a
You've
Congress.
got, that's right.
It's what you're saying, Marianne, is something that you and I both know. This is really not just the Orban playbook, it's the Hitler playbook,
Thank you for
almost
saying that.
line by line.
I think that's interesting what you're saying. First of all, I want to say two things to what you just said, and I certainly
Sure.
agree. Everything that I said before, if you and add to that the Supreme Court being so eager to give
Yes.
him more and more power, that those form the core of authoritarianism. What's happening now is that we're now entering into the phase of totalitarianism with this militarization of the U.S. cities,
Mm,
starting with Washington, D.C., and his
yeah.
saying, of course,
Well,
that this is a template he plans to take on the road.
well, he started really with
So,
the LA.
yeah,
He
that's right.
started
That was
with
the sort
LA.
of test, right? That's
Yes.
exactly right.
Sure.
Now, what you just said is it's so interesting too, because where we are now, there had been a lot of talk. He even mentioned Viktor Orban of Hungary in one of his debates with Kamala Harris. But you said something that I think is so important. People have been saying for a long time, oh, don't go so, this
That's
Hitler
right.
thing. You know what, Mitchell,
Yeah.
what you just said is true. We're not talking about Hitler enough at this point. By the way, there was a very interesting book called Fascism by Madeleine Albright. And one of the things that she
Oh,
said
really?
in there that I had not known, the phrase drain the swamp, that came from Mussolini.
I did
So
not
there
know
is so
that.
much going on that, like you said, is out of the Orban playbook, is straight out of the Third Reich playbook, including what's going on with the Department of Homeland Security right now. They've been talking about how these memes attracting these people to come work for it have these white nationalist tones. It is basically a white nationalist army that you've got here. I
Yeah,
think that if
that's
anything, the
right.
greater danger is to underestimate the totalitarian attack on our
We'll
country at this point.
also
I'm trying to
factor
get
in.
this light right. I feel there's a light in the middle of my forehead, and I want to
Oh,
hold
please
on just a moment.
adjust
Hey,
accordingly.
Lauren, would you
Adjust.
come here for a moment, please?
Help me with the
If I
lighting.
can,
He's, but there's another
would you
little
turn that off for me,
wrinkle.
please? That's
There's another little
no,
wrinkle.
no, we need that one. I'm going to take this one
No, it's
down.
this one over here, not that
Okay.
one. It's that one over here,
Okay.
not
Yeah.
this
Okay.
one.
We're okay now. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All
we
right.
needed a
Tell me what
little
you got.
we needed a little comedic humor there, so thank you.
Yeah.
But I wanted to just also bring to bear, Marianne, that there are members of the January 6th
Yeah.
coterie who are now
That they've hired now.
serving, right? Exactly,
Yeah. They've
in
hired them.
high level DOJ positions. I mean, what gets scarier? So I want to just emphasize something that you said that I really am glad and am pleased that you said, not that I'm pleased that it's happening,
Yeah.
but that you
Right.
corroborated, and that is the reference to Hitler, because there is exactly, I mean, you and I are also born Jewish. And so we
We
have a
are. I am a
particular
Jew.
sensitivity to that subject. And for people like us to say that it really is parallel. And by the way, what's happening in particular in Israel under the Netanyahu government is also, from a Hitlerian point of view, just daunting. It's like history keeps repeating itself and no one seems to learn. Your comments.
Well, I think in terms
Relative to Gaza, of course, I'm talking about,
of course, of
and the
course.
starvation of
Um,
children.
when, when you talk about the picking up of immigrants and the ICE raids. It is
Exactly.
definitely like a Gestapo. It is absolutely like a Gestapo, and and you're right. If we recognize what happened, picking Jews up off the street, it should be the Jews who are most upset about this. You know, sometimes people
Yes.
say, "Oh, how can you compare it to the Holocaust? That's insulting to people who went through the Holocaust." I think quite the opposite. I think if you have a knowledge of the Holocaust, whether you're Jewish or not, you are even more sensitive to what is happening, whether it's Latinos, whether it's now homeless people. What's it going to be next? I think that's the real question
Exactly.
here in the United States. Latinos, homeless people, the way they talk about trans people. And that's where I think the white nationalist and Christian nationalist issue comes in. Israel is, of course, as American citizens, that's happening in Israel. But I also think that, well, that's such a different topic, and we can talk about it, but it's
Yeah,
not tangential. And
sure.
yeah.
Please
In terms
continue.
of what's happening here in the United States,
Yeah.
85% of the homeless population in Washington, D.C. is Black. So they're definitely beyond racial overtones. I heard an interview with
Yes.
Margaret Atwood, and she said basically the American elite have decided that the poor in this country are expendable. The poor in this country are like throwaway people. That's what's happening today.
Yeah.
I was reading a quote from President Roosevelt's second inaugural address, where he said that the progress of a country is measured by not by how much it does for those who already have a lot, but by what it does for those who have too little. And that we are in any way acquiescing to this codified and normalized cruelty is horrific. Now, there are people, Mitchell, within the, spiritual and personal growth world who
Yes.
would say that what you focus on expands. First of all, that's not scriptural on any certainly every thought creates form, but as the
Sure.
Course in Miracles says, look at the crucifixion, but do not dwell on it. If you don't look at the things that are happening, you're not in transcendence, you're in denial. And the Course in Miracles talks about positive denial, which is that you recognize these things that are happening, but you deny their power to stand. And I think that that's really what's the case now. We have to find within ourselves conviction. Conviction is a force multiplier. The Course in Miracles says miracles are born of conviction. We need
Mm.
to find that fierce place within ourselves where we say, this will not happen on my watch. It simply will not happen on my watch. And I think anyone who is refusing to do that, who is allowing themselves to look away, is also kidding themselves. Because if you think he's not going to get to you, unless you're a Christian white man who buys into this stuff. And by the way, this whole idea, let's be very clear about Christian nationalism. Christian nationalism in America is a political movement. It has
Right.
zero to do with the
Nothing to do with
teachings of Christ.
Christianity. Yeah.
Nothing to do with the. But
Yeah.
I was hearing
Yeah.
this minister named Joel Webbin online, and he was talking about women being in power, women being in power in government, women being in power in business, women being power in society. And
Hmm.
then he says, and this man is serious, and he has a voice within that movement. He said, God would not bless this.
Wow.
God would not bless this, he's saying. And
Wow.
this is a very serious moment. I think code red alerts are sounding all over the place.
Yeah, I think so. I really want to commend you because you have had the courage to stand up and stick with your voice through hell. And that's really what it has been. If you think about the way the media treated you during the course of that election was horrific. And yes, there were a few exceptions, but media works on hype and they're always looking for the news, as they say, that bleeds. And I understand that there is a negative on a physiological level. There is a negative bias to the brain, which is there for purposes of survival. But we're not really in survival mode. We don't have a tiger and a lion and a bear around the corner, yet we live as though. And that is a serious problem. So, as you said earlier, you and I and people of our ilk look at what is going on from a psychological and emotional point of view and seek to understand why. We ask the question, why is this happening? Why do people do what they do and behave these ways? And we come to some pretty sad conclusions. And what I really want to just mention here, based on the last points that you were making, Marianne, is that there's this notion, let me put it this way first, that someone who is spiritual will only focus on the good. But this is such a miscomprehension. Right, exactly. Such a miscomprehension. You have to look at all of it. Look at, as you said before, the systems in which we are engaged. If you don't see the dark, you won't also see the light. You've got to see the dance between them. Anyway, I just really want to commend you because it takes a lot in your position, having been the spiritual teacher that you have been, to be so forthright and honest about stating that we need to see what's really going on here so that we can improve it. Anyway, I wanted
Well,
to
thank you.
acknowledge you.
Well, thank you. Pouring a cheap yellow smiley face over our hearts and calling that spirituality, it has
Correct.
nothing to do with any great religious spiritual story. Before there was the
So
resurrection of
true.
Jesus, there was the crucifixion. Before the Israelites made it to the promised land, they were first enslaved by Pharaoh. Before Buddha began his journey to enlightenment, he first saw the suffering out in people outside his father's
Exactly. The
walls,
gates.
castle
Right.
walls, which is why he said life is suffering. So there's nothing, this half-baked spiritual understanding, you only see the good. As I said, we want to practice positive denial. And also
Yes.
this idea that, if you look at it expands, tell that to an oncologist. Right. Well, can you imagine a doctor, you have cancer, and it says, well, listen, it's only stage one. Let's just ignore it and maybe it'll go away. No, you have
Forget
some things.
about it.
Yeah, some things. Yeah, some things. It's all part of the illusion. Some
Yeah,
things expand because you don't look at them.
right.
And in
Exactly.
fact, there's
Because
no
they're ignored.
spiritual. Right, right. Because and some spiritual. There's no spiritual or religious path anywhere that gives any of us a pass on addressing human suffering or the suffering of any sentient being. So yes, that was difficult for me,
Yeah.
Mitchell, actually. And
Yeah.
it was also difficult, the Edmund Burke line that evil triumphs when enough good men do nothing.
Yes.
I was, um, I was hopeful that I would be able to help harness progressive spirituality, what you might think of as progressive spirituality. You
Hmm.
have
Hmm.
20% of Americans who say they're spiritual, not religious, for political purposes.
Yes.
My conversation was not appreciated. And my conversation was not appreciated, not as they say, because I'm quote unquote spiritual, or as they would say, woo woo. Because remember, there were people criticizing my books who never read them. The
Of
reason I was
course.
considered inconvenient by that system
Yeah.
was because I was talking about universal health care, was because I was talking about tuition-free college and tech school, was
Oh,
because I was talking about a wealth tax, was because I was talking about income
yeah.
inequality, but because I was talking about how the Democratic Party needs to return to its core principle of unequivocal advocacy for the working people of the United States. So this
Yes.
idea of she's woo-woo was just the fairy dust thrown in people's eyes so that serious people would think, well, I'm too serious to go listen to her. Now,
Yes.
this is a
You were
feminist issue.
speaking economics, is what
I was
you're
speaking
actually
economics.
reminding me, if you don't mind my interjecting this, that what happened with Martin Luther King when he was speaking about civil rights, they gave him a forum. I mean, LBJ gave him a forum. But when he started talking about Vietnam, which was starting to hit the pocketbook of the military industrial complex, that's when he became persona non grata. And that's
That's exactly
ultimately
right.
what led to his assassination by
Absolutely.
Hoover et
That's
al.
exactly.
Yeah.
But it was sad, absolutely. It was sad for me to see how easily manipulated people are, how
Yeah.
easily propagandized people are. And also for women, I became such a radioactive, I felt like it was 16th century Europe and it was witch burning.
Yeah.
Ooh, she's
Right.
crazy. She's crazy and she's mean, right? It's like, really? Really? Have you ever been in a room when Bill Clinton or Bernie Sanders? I mean,
Oh my
but
God.
what hurt my feelings and what I hope that many people will learn from this.
Yes.
There was, particularly among women, they have made her radioactive. So if I say, well, actually, I agree with her, I might be made radioactive too. So it wasn't just the people who lied about me. That's painful. Even more painful was people who had known me for years and know
Oh
who I am.
my.
who
Oh,
wouldn't say things like, I don't even know if you agree with her politics, but like I've known her for 25 years and
yeah,
that's kind of
right.
not who she is.
And she's a female mensch, right? Yeah,
I am who I am. I'm a decent person. I'm not perfect, but I'm certainly not the
sure,
person that they were picturing. And
sure,
so, I
sure.
hope that next time somebody comes around, uh, that we all think a little more deeply about how easily we might be propagandized and just believing anonymous sources on the internet and these
Exactly.
narratives. What they do that's so fascinating, they create a doppelganger of who you are. And
Yeah,
it's very difficult to fight your doppelganger. And how do you prove a negative?
yeah,
How do you prove an?
right.
We heard
It's a
you will
double
not find
bind.
one AIDS patient say she told me not to take my medicine. You just won't find that person. But you have someone like Sonny Hostin say it enough on The View, and
What are you going to do? That's the
it's a
power
dirty
of
world out
media.
there.
That's, of
That's
course,
in
the
the
way
world.
the CIA has been working for decades. When they don't approve of something, they drop a little, usually a sexual kind of innuendo into the media. Like, ding, they just drop it in and then try to fight that if you are
That's right.
actually a
That's
fully
exactly right.
legitimate,
Right.
honorable,
Right.
integrity-based
Right.
person.
Right.
You'll have
So
a
they'll find
hell
whatever.
of a
They'll
time.
find one sentence in a book, or they'll find one sentence in a lecture, or they'll find one little, it's something that they can then build up. Now, you're
Exactly.
responsible. We believe that we're responsible for your own experience. And I certainly learned, my own mistakes in not establishing because I was known within one field.
Yes.
I assumed, and also because in 2020, I did get my message out there. I was on a debate stage. I was at a
Yes.
CNN town hall. I was on CNN and
Yes.
MSNBC enough. This time they blacklisted me from the beginning and wouldn't
Did they
and I just
really?
strolled in thinking I would have a chance to tell my
Do you
story.
have any idea about why the change?
Yeah, because they had decided it was Biden. And they didn't want anybody to
Oh,
be talking in a
I see.
way that would make people think, well, maybe we should hear that compared to the president. And I think also,
Oh,
if I had had a chance to speak about those things, to speak about my critique of why I did not believe that this would defeat Trump this time. The fact that it beat him in 2020, it's like saying you won an Oscar last year, so you won it this year. Well,
that's
it's a
right.
different script, it's a different movie, it's a different performance. It would have made people start thinking, and I think other Democrats would have then come in. They were just, their whole point was suppress the conversation. We're going with Biden. We're going with Biden. No one else. We got to go with Biden. We got to go with Biden. And very intelligent people that you and I know were like, no, we got to go with Biden, and wouldn't even hear. Yeah.
I gotta say, not that I'm a soothsayer or anything, but um,
Not that
I re
what?
I remember what Biden said that we both referenced earlier about being a one-term president. And I
Yeah.
remembered that at least 3 years into his presidency, and I started writing him letters about, I was reminding him of what he said as we approached the election. And I said, remember, Mr. President, you said that you were going to be running for one term and one term only. So please bow out of the race so that others can step forward. And when I say I wrote probably 3 dozen letters, I'm not exaggerating a bit. I wasn't only talking about that. I spoke a lot about what the U.S. Role was with Ukraine, controversial, and with especially the Israelis, with the government. And, you know, at least then I felt that I could speak. At this point, honestly, Marianne, with this Gestapo style government, I feel that our wings have really been clipped. And I'd really love to hear what you have to say about this because you said the phrase earlier, red alert. So I'd love to just hear, you live in Washington. You're experiencing this in a way firsthand, like others aren't. So I'd love to know what your insights are in this regard.
Well, first of all, in terms of Biden, people say, the big problem is that Biden didn't drop out. It should not have mattered for the reasons that I said. You have a primary.
Yes,
So
that's
Democratic
right.
voters shouldn't have been so willing to just give it to him for no other reason than that he decided. That's not how it should work. A primary should be, and the Democratic Party, that establishment elite at that time
Yes.
seemed to think that, if you haven't climbed up the ladder of the political class, that you have no right to be there.
Right.
But that's not how our Constitution was written. And James Madison said you're qualified to be president if you were born here, if you are over 35, and if you have lived here for 14 years. There are different ladders. There are different
Yes.
ladders, not just political class. And I think, oddly enough, the Republicans feel that
There's a
even more.
constitutional
In
ladder.
terms of Israel, it's interesting because I was the ceasefire candidate, but former Congressman Andrew Levin had started this thing called Uncommitted, which really was nothing but giving more delegates to Biden. And there was, once again, this performative aspect. We're voting for uncommitted, but even though that's not doing anything other than giving more delegates to Biden. Now, your last question is, where are we now?
Yes.
And where we are now is that we are facing a totalitarian threat.
Well, my second last question. My next question is, where do we go from here?
Well, yeah, but you can't stop what you won't name. So we need to name what's happening here. There are
Yes.
three phases on the way to fascism. First, there is authoritarianism, then there's totalitarianism, and then there's fascism. So authoritarianism is what we already have for the reasons that you and I talked about earlier.
Yes.
Totalitarianism is when you add the military element, and this military element, like you said, here in DC. But the president has already said that this quote unquote liberation of the American cities, and by that he means blue cities, right?
Yeah, sure.
Mainly those led by black mayors, by the way.
Yeah, right.
He says that this is
We've
a
noticed.
template.
Yeah.
Right, we've noticed. So this is something that is completely contrary to the system of laws that is core to a U.S. constitutional system. Now, I want to go back to talk for a moment about the American Revolution. During the American Revolution, one of the reasons that the British lost, is that they were fighting a 17th century war in the 18th century. They send soldiers over in bright red coats, and they're in a line, and they're going to wait till somebody yells fire before they even take their muskets out. The American colonists at that time had been exposed to Native Americans. And their way of fighting a war was to jump out from behind trees. It was really the beginning of what you and I today would see as guerrilla warfare. We are in a political war. There is war now being waged against American democracy and a constitutional system of government. We need to deal with this with a political new think. Old think is, who are the Democrats going to put up in 28? Well, that's so far from now, as important as that is.
Yes.
But old think is concentrating on the 26 elections, even though that's extremely important. And by the way, I want to make it clear, I'm very impressed by some of the heroism being displayed right now by some of our political leaders, by some of these Democratic congressmen, senators, governors, judges, some of whom are Republican. This isn't even left-right at this point, right? There is heroism being shown. But I think the point is that you and I, all of us, each and every one of us now, need to recognize that the reason we're here is because we farmed out our citizenship. We farmed out the power of citizenship, thinking somebody else would handle it. Today, each and every one of us have to say, what have I done today? What podcast have I shared? What article did I read? What post did I make? What content did I create? What town hall did I go to? What letter, this is a moment, we will not be able to save our democracy if we look at it as a part-time job.
Yes.
Or if we look at it as somebody else's job to do. Each and every one of us create content, share content, go to protests, go to town halls, write your Congress
responsibility, Marianne, is what you're talking about.
And if we had not taken our eye off that ball,
civil civic responsibility.
That's right. If we had not bought into this notion that a political class would take care of it, we would never have gotten into this situation. And we're going to get out of the situation by we, the people, making sure that we're the boss here.
Yeah. No, very well stated. And I fully agree with you. I have to comment on one other thing and acknowledge you, if you don't mind. It's your understanding and knowledge and experience and articulateness about American history is phenomenal. And I've looked at some of your writing on it, of course, your books. And when I laugh to myself when I think of what you know and the command you have of American history, and not just facts, but understanding of what our forefathers were saying, and that of the ordinary congressperson, representative, or senator who know, as we say in the old language, bubkiss in comparison to what you know. And it's just laughable that this guy is called president and he knows nothing about US history and refuses to learn. I'm not even sure he knows how to read. That's how serious that part is. But as salesmen, par excellence. And that, of course, goes back to what you were saying earlier about propaganda and how easily people are willing to accept a storyline when there's nothing behind it. It's the emperor without clothes yet again.
Yeah,
You
anonymous
know?
sources. Anybody can say anything about anybody. And people say,
And
yeah,
they
people
do.
say, well,
And
I
they
read it on
do.
the internet. You
Right.
read on the, in terms of Trump, it's not even what he doesn't know, it's what he doesn't respect.
True.
But you're right, when he was showing off the
Like the
Declaration of
body of
Independence,
law. What? I'm
yeah,
sorry.
when he was showing off the Declaration of Independence in the Oval Office, and the ABC reporter said, what does it mean to you? He so clearly hadn't read it. He so clearly hadn't read it. He said, oh, well, it's about unity and love. No, it's not about unity and love. It's about a lot of really great things, but it's not about unity or love.
Oh my God. So you're right. You're talking about the three stages toward fascism: authoritarianism, totalitarianism, toward fascism. And that is the trajectory of what's happening. What's going on in Texas, for instance, and the gerrymandering. I mean, gerrymandering has been a problem historically for a long time, since the word actually came into existence. That was the expression of the problem, actually, of, it was a symptom of the issue of turf control. But it's only gotten worse. And
Well, it's
now
on steroids now with
it's
what
on
they're doing.
steroids, right? So now we have California and New York and others saying, okay, if you do that, Texas, we're going to do it. What kind of madness? Where is the adult in the room, Marianne? I
Well,
don't see it.
well, wait a minute. The rules, I agree with the governor of California. I agree with Pritzker in Illinois. I agree with Hochul in New York. And they're saying the old rules don't even apply anymore.
Oh,
These people are shredding our democracy. Remember, California has historically stood for instance, Governor Newsom, for an independent commission. That's how these districts should
yes,
be determined.
right,
Because you're right, historically, Democrats have done it, Republicans have done it. It should be
correct.
independent commissions that determine this, having to do with population. It should have nothing to do with anything partisan. But this now is more than gerrymandering. It's gerrymandering on steroids. Not only that, the president plans not only to do this in Texas, but also in Missouri and in Ohio. So I believe that Newsom is absolutely correct to put it on the ballot in California. They are waging war on our democracy.
Yes,
These people are waging war. Pearl Harbor has been bombed. Okay, so and I think that any idea that we are arguing with people in good faith, everybody needs to grow up right now. This is about saving our democracy right now. So I think that Pritzker, he can do a lot in Illinois.
sure.
Governor Hochul in New
New
York
York,
has said that she cannot do anything in time for the 26 election. So at this point, it needs to be a nonviolent response, but it needs to be a very, very serious response and without any illusion that they're not absolutely out to destroy the
okay.
bottom line of the
So
freedom of the United States.
it sounds like this is the beginning of the answer to sort of my third question, which is, where do we go from here? How do we embody and carry forward our highest human ideals and values? And by the way, my way of looking at what is going on with the degradation of the Department of Justice and the Supreme Court, which I think, I mean, I virtually cried last August 1st, 2024, when the Supreme Court made the decision to give the president even more power and made him
Immunity, ridiculous,
immune to the
ridiculous.
to anything if he were doing what he was doing in the name of the presidency. I mean,
Right.
I could not
Which is
believe,
everything.
which is
Which is
everything.
absolutely everything.
I could
Yeah,
not
which is
believe
anything but
my
death.
ears that
That's right.
rational human beings in that level of society would commit a treasonous act. And that's how I feel what they have done. Anyway, that aside, we are dealing in the trenches right now, which you're indicating. I get it. It is a level of warfare. I get it. Nonviolent warfare. There's an economic war. We know that, as you were saying earlier, against the poor people, largely also against the blacks. I mean, it's like the clock has been rolled back, but we still are who we are, and we still want the United States to be a United States. And it's in our heart, it's in our emotions, it's in our values as human beings. I keep saying everything really shouldn't be political at all. Forget the parties. It's just let's talk about what we can do to advance our human nature in this country. So I would love to hear what you have to say about those kinds of things.
Well, this goes
And what
back to
you're
what you and
doing,
I,
by the way, also as a political figure now, what are you looking at in the future? What are you considering?
well, this goes back to what you and I were talking about before, about political guerrilla warfare and
Yes.
each and every citizen taking up the mantle of power. When Mahatma Gandhi was asked, who is the leader of the Indian independence movement? His response was, the small, still voice within. There's a line in the Course in Miracles that says, where you wake up in the morning, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say and to whom? If somebody
Mm,
likes this interview, they need to share it. They need to share it on their platforms. If there is a town hall, know exactly what your Congress people are doing. I know my Substack, mariannewilliamson.substack.com.
yes.
And also on my Instagram, I curate on my stories a lot of things. Today, I did an interview with a gentleman from the homeless organization that's at work here in Washington, D.C. Because
Mm-hmm.
what's happening is a war on the homeless in this country. We have 700,000 to 800,000 people who are homeless. And the response of the Trump administration is to get rid of them. I mean, literally criminalize homelessness. They say we're going to send them somewhere. Where are you sending them? Nobody knows.
There's
So
no
we're
way.
literally, there is no way. We're disappearing people. So there has been a bill, for instance, that I talk about in that interview called housingnothandcuffs.org. Go
Nice.
there, write to your congressperson, whether they're Democrat or Republican, say you want them to support that bill. Once again, housingnothandcuffs.org. Support that bill. Some people might say, well, my one call can't make a difference. That's not true.
Not
Or
true.
to say, well, mine is a Democrat anyway. Well, say that you support it and you want them to be louder about it. There are things that each
Yes.
of us can do, but don't sit around and wonder what the party is going to do.
Right.
Everybody's doing what they can.
Yep.
And at this point, we really have to understand it's a download that every single person is getting. And don't be quiet. Cynicism is an excuse for not helping. And each and every day, there's something that any of us can do, flood the field. They're flooding it with lies, flood it with truth. Anytime you
Beautiful.
see somebody tell a bunch of lies on a post, respond to it with the truth. But you have to educate yourself enough to be able to do that. Share links
That's
of
right.
things that tell the truth. If they're spreading hate, you spread love. You've got to there. It's a field. We've got to form a massive field of genuine patriotism, which is to love this country. To love America is to love Americans.
Yes.
Nobody has a monopoly on truth, and nobody gets to own this country. They want to get rid. They don't.
Get
Trump
rid of
does not see people
Americans.
like.
They're getting rid of
Yeah,
Americans.
Trump does not see people like us as his political opponents. He calls us lunatics. He sees us as the enemy. This is extremely dangerous.
It's really true. Beautiful response. I really appreciate it. And where I come from and the kinds of things that I think about through a better world and this organization is I look at the fact that in this country at this point in time, we have the technology called 3D printing. One of the things that we can print are houses. We can print apartment buildings. We can print tiny houses. There is no excuse at all for homelessness in this country. It can be done within, let's say outlying areas. It doesn't have to be in the inner city of Washington, New York, Chicago, or LA. It can be in outlying areas. I don't see anything wrong with that. Living in the rural world is beautiful. And, there are different creative ways of creating community. But the point is, for a fraction of the cost of the bombs that are being flown over to Israel right now, and Ukraine for that matter, for a fraction of the cost, we could be rebuilding America for all people. I just wanted to share that. In terms of solutions.
Well, yes, and I think this issue of the tiny houses is a really beautiful type of initiative. But I think we also need to keep our eyes on what we're going to do in this country on the other side of this catastrophic chapter. On the other side of this catastrophic chapter, we need to build our economy in such a way that there aren't so many homeless people. Because even if you're talking about building tiny houses, you're treating the symptom. Let's remember, these people are homeless because they couldn't get into the system. Modern capitalism, the strain of capitalism that has taken hold over the last few decades makes it too hard for too many people to get in. We're not, during the 1970s, the average American could afford a house. The average American couple could afford a house, could afford a car, could afford a yearly vacation, could afford its kids to send to college. So over the last 50 years, there's been this massive $50 trillion transfer of wealth from the bottom 90%. That we have to address this on the causal level. There are simply too many Americans who can't get into the game. If you get into the game in America, this is the best place in the world to be. Although now with Trump, what can you say? Too many people couldn't get into the game. So we have to do more than just build houses. We need to build an economy. Do you know how many thousands of people? We have about 700,000 to 800,000 homeless people in America. Many thousands of them work full time. By the way, they take, many of them have children. They go into McDonald's to use the computers there.
Oh,
right. And also when they have the computers to use the electricity and to use the Wi-Fi. What's happening to these kids today? What's happening? They're taking all their belongings. Think of the personal trauma of it. The whole thing is horrific.
No, I totally get it, and I
want to say something else about something you said. I totally agree that the United States should not be supporting the military actions of Netanyahu. I think Netanyahu is a war criminal. But I also push back against this idea that Israel's the problem here in every little thing. We have a much bigger problem than only that. And I think that has become such a catch-all within the left. And it's not that I support in any way.
I'm not purporting that.
But of all the things we could, the things we could compare, weird expenditure of money.
Marianne, I am looking at the children of Gaza. I am watching them starve in the 21st century, and I am sick to my stomach to see it. It's a plan.
Okay.
It's a plan.
I agree.
That's what I'm talking about.
I 100% agree with you. I 100% agree with you. And what about the children of Ukraine?
That's right. I agree.
So that's all I'm saying. It's not the only place where an occupying force is being absolutely brutal and horrific. Absolutely. That's all I'm saying. I am not in any way disagreeing with you. I said that as a presidential candidate.
Yes.
I said that as a presidential candidate.
Yes.
So I do not disagree with that at all. But the fact that we have this knee-jerk temptation these days to always go back to, and if only we weren't supporting Israel, these things would be happening regardless of whether or not what was going on in Israel was going on. That's all I'm saying.
We're on absolutely the same page. I agree. I am not interested in painting anyone.
And I think we need to be sensitive to that.
Yeah, we're on the same page. I want to go back though to the idea of the tiny houses and that being a symptom, and I completely agree with you. And it's the fish in the fishing rod. But these people need a fish, they need a fish. And then the rebuilding of an economy for all. And some of us are involved in different projects that have to do with the decentralizing of the banking system, for
By the
instance.
way,
Yeah,
when you were talking about, oh, if we weren't spending so much money here or there, do you know how
yeah.
much it's costing to keep the National Guard on the streets of DC every
Oh,
day?
no.
$450,000. Robert Rice says $450,000. So that's what we're spending our money
And what,
on rather
and
than
right,
housing.
exactly. And so Dodge was supposed for, government efficiency. This guy, between his um celebration of his birthday that costs anywhere from 45 million modestly, maybe up to 100 million, and destroying the streets of Washington with the tanks that the streets are not made for, and all of these other crazy $200 million expenditure for a new ballroom in the White House. I mean, this is madness. I mean, and someone was saying earlier about the Republican Party, which of course was the party of Lincoln, and it was the Freedom Party, and it was the party always of small government. There has never been more overreach and micromanagement of state business than in this administration. I mean, it's the literal opposite of the
Yeah, it's the
essence
opposite of everything. Yeah,
of
these are
the
the people who
Republican
supposedly don't
Party.
want government on your back. There has never been such overreach of government control as is now exhibited by this government. And don't forget that every time he goes to play golf, it's over $3 million.
Oh,
In
you
terms
are
of that
kidding me.
ballroom, which is supposedly, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And a lot of that
You
money
mean
goes to
because
him
of
because it's for his properties. It goes to his
the
properties.
security
Yeah,
detail, you
a
mean?
lot of that is for his properties. Yeah, $3 million every time.
I did not know
So
that.
as far as the ballroom is concerned, that's about 200 million, which he and his friends are going to pay for. But
We'll
I
see.
think that his grandiose vision for the White House is really, really sad. Yeah, really sad.
Marianne, what happened to the emollients clause of the Constitution?
Well, the thing is, there is no one left there to hold him accountable. That's what's so
Wait a
devastating
minute. There's
about this
Pam
moment.
Bondi.
That exactly. You got it. So he came in there just like Hitler did, just get rid of him. So the kind of people that would hold this administration, the kind of positions that would hold this administration accountable, they either got rid of the position or they got rid of the person. Look at what happened with the Commissioner of Labor,
Oh, right.
Bureau of Labor
Bureau of
Statistics.
right,
She gave
exactly.
bad news about the economy. She said the jobs report was not good. So let's shoot the messenger. He says, oh, she was just doing it for political reasons. She was a nonpartisan appointee, right? So he
Off
puts
with
in
her
one of his
head.
sycophants. Right. So he puts in his people, like you said, Pam Bondi is at this point nothing, just like Congress is, just like so many of these agencies.
Correct.
They're at this point just there to do the president's bidding. That it has nothing to do with the independence of agencies anymore. And this is
Or
really the
branches of
demolition,
government. Yeah,
right? And so this is the demolition of the core pieces of American democracy as we know it.
I really agree. I just want to corroborate a point that you're making, yes, about people in action. And I've interviewed and I'm friendly with Sam Daly Harris, who you may or may not know, who
Of
wrote
course
the
I do.
book Reclaim Our Democracy. And I've had him on a number of times talking about just what you're referring to. And he has taken civil action and civic action to another level because he helps people organize, get their story together, learn the facts, and go into their Congress members in person in Washington or at home. And it's a phenomenal work he's doing to help support
Yeah.
this kind of civic action. I just wanted to
Well,
mention.
oh yeah. I mean, I used to be on the board of results. He is one of the
Oh
main
my God.
anti-poverty
Pardon
and
my
anti-hunger.
ignorance.
Well,
Okay,
no, don't be silly. But everything you said about him, I certainly agree with him. In fact, I'm interviewing him sometime in the next couple of weeks. He
wonderful.
is someone whose work, anti-poverty, anti-hunger, and you're absolutely right with what you said. He actually teaches people how to be civic activist. He teaches people how to be citizen lobbyists. He's been a
Exactly.
great inspiration to me, as to you, and his books, everything about Sam Daly Harris. I totally agree with you. And
Oh,
I
that's
think that there are
wonderful.
so many heroes right now. There are heroes that are known,
Yes.
and there are heroes that are not known.
Unknown. True.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay. So wrapping up, I'd like to ask you, what are your political aspirations at this point? What are you looking to do next? Political or otherwise?
Just tell the truth as best as I can. I've experienced such a brutality of that system.
Yeah,
And I think that running for office is one way that you can share your, and what I
sure.
found actually was that running for office actually made it harder to get your message out. Actually made it harder because they want to
Yeah.
talk about whatever they want to talk about if they don't want your message to get out. So
Yes.
at this point, we just need to flood
Interesting
the field with
points.
radical truth telling as best we can. So at this point, that would not
Yeah,
be for me running for office, but telling the truth as best I can, which is what you're doing, which is I'm sure what everybody
exactly.
watching this right now is doing, the
Right.
public conversation.
Right.
And
I
just
appreciate
being
that.
a good gorilla out there as best I can.
You're a beautiful gorilla, if I may say. Uh,
Thank you. Thank you.
you're reminding me of a relationship I had with John Hagelin of the Natural
Oh, I
Law
remember
Party.
John. I knew John, of
You
course.
knew John, of
Haven't seen him in
course,
a few years. Yeah, and he
right?
ran for president, Natural Law Party. I voted for
Exactly.
John in 1996.
That
Yeah.
so did I. So did
Hmm.
I.
Hmm.
And I was a major
Yeah.
advocate of his in 96 and then again in 2000. He's been here for in my grassroots studio and I did a lot of advocacy. He wanted me to run against Hillary Clinton for senator in the Natural Law Party in that year.
Dennis
And I said,
Kucinich,
I'd rather
I've,
be your advisor when we make you president. But I brought him up
you,
for a reason. And I just want to share this with you. And then I want to hear what you have to say. And that is after he lost, after he uh, qualified to be on stage in the debate, the televised debate, according to the rules of the Federal Election Commission. He checked every box. And they said to him, he told me this, they wouldn't let him on stage. And he said, well, why not? I mean, the law reads this, and I qualified because we don't think you stand a chance. And he said, but
that's right.
it's not up to what you
Not
think,
up to you. And
it's
that's what
up
I
to
experienced in spades.
people.
Of
And he
course, with
said, I'm throwing in my towel. I can't do this anymore. That's what I wanted to just share with you.
I think with me, it was not just, I mean, their narrative was she doesn't have a chance. I think I made a very good case that I would have had a better chance than Joe Biden. And I think that the most important was that I
You
would have
were
had a
gaining.
chance of,
You were gaining.
yeah,
That's what I
yeah,
saw.
I would have had a chance of opening up a conversation that I think would have made more Democrats enter into the field. And I think the most important thing is what you said before. It's not their job to suppress democracy that way. This is like the Soviet Union, which would say, yeah, we're having elections, but they feel they get to determine who the candidates are. So, when I hear stories about, oh, did the Russians interfere with the election in 2016? Well, if anybody interfered with a primary here, anybody's interfering with an election. So
That's
I
right.
understand John's frustration because I've been there and I've seen how dark that is. But
Exactly.
I also think, Dennis Kucinich once said to me, every campaign has a success on some level. And I think that's true about John Hagelin. You were inspired
Yes,
by John. I was inspired by John.
absolutely.
Everybody get inches of ground, inches of ground. If
Right.
it inspires anyone to run next time. So I
Exactly.
that's how I was. And also, I
That's
got
right.
almost 500,000 votes. And given how little how much suppression there was of the voice of my campaign.
Yeah,
That means
that's
that everybody,
pretty
practically everybody who heard
impressive.
me voted for me. So,
Yeah,
people
that's
hear
pretty
you.
impressive.
It becomes part of a conversation. And
That's right. You're absolutely
and
right. And John said that at the time as well. He said, if I don't think I'm going to win. So I'm not, that's
and
not
I didn't think I was going to win, but if I had been allowed to get my message out in 24 the way I did
exactly.
in 20, it could have definitely impacted the election.
Affecting a sphere of influence. And
Right.
that's what he was going for. And that's what you were going for. And someday we may have an enlightened society enough, my dear Marianne, that someone like you can get elected. That is what
Well, we
I
have a
would
lot
love
of work
to
to
see.
do. We have a lot of work to do right now to make sure that we can even guarantee that there will be elections. So I hope that we, in this conversation, inspire people to know that each
Get
and every
into
one of us has
action.
to get involved.
Marianne Williamson, thank you so much for joining me again today here on A Better World. You're doing
Thank
beautiful
you.
work. Keep it up.
Right back at you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wow, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did.
Was that
Marianne
okay?
is a real winner. It was more than okay. I want to thank you all for watching, and please tune in for next week. We have more of good work. Thanks again for joining, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.